Welcome to the Poetry Peacast with me, Patricia, your host. This week we're coming to you from South Africa. Although, in reality, I'm still very much in Zürich, wondering where I put my sunglasses and taking my hay fever meds. That said, the video which prompted today's poems was filmed on a trip I took to South Africa a couple of years ago, when I flew over there for my son's wedding. So much has happened since that it feels like several lifetimes ago. The poems you'll hear today are original pieces from March's video prompt, beautifully edited and curated by Johnny Moran. Thank you, Johnny, for steering the ship, or in this case, the canoe. And thank you, of course, to all the poets who joined us on this little river journey. Congratulations to those whose poems have been selected to be read today. You'll also be featured in the journal 126, which with a fair wind should be out sometime next week. Although, a bit of a caveat, Crystal Palace are in yet another semi-final, this time a European competition. Yes, really. For those of you keeping score, that's 2 cups already won this year, and a very real chance of another. So if you wouldn't mind crossing fingers, toes, and any other available limbs, that would be marvellous. I've even managed to get a ticket for the home semi, and I can tell you now, the stadium will be absolutely rocking. Whatever the outcome, there will be tears. Long story short, journal production might be a little delayed, sorry. Keep an eye out for the newsletter, which you have to sign up for. No excuses. You'll find the sign up on the website. Okay, enough about football, because that's not what you're here for. What about the poetry? And this time I have some comments from the curating editor, Johnny Moran. They give us a clue as to why he chose these poems. And I thought that might be interesting for you. So I'm going to share them. Thanks again, Johnny. Off we go. Floating upstream, laughter of children floating downstream. Floating upstream, laughter of children floating downstream. And that's by Herb Tate. And Johnny thought the middle line superbly tied the first and third lines together. And he's not wrong, is he? Dusk light. The shadows linger amid laughter. Dusk light. The shadows linger amid laughter. That's by Nina Singh. And Johnny says, it's that perfect moment when the sun has just gone down. The shadows are almost gone. It will soon be dark, but not just yet. Swivelling his net, the old man clears last year's debris from the lake. Swivelling his net, the old man clears last year's debris from the lake. David Cox. And Johnny says that's a universal image, but instead of fish, he's catching rubbish. And he thought the word swivelling was an interesting word. Instead of casting, Johnny can see him turning as he throws the net. And it will be the same next year as it was last year. A never-ending task. I was down at the lake this week, riding around it, and I stopped often to take a look at the wildlife and see what was going on in the lake itself. And at the moment it's absolutely covered with thick yellow pollen. And it's clumped together and swimming in the lake in great big blobs. No wonder I'm suffering so badly with hay fever. Whirlpools with every stroke, my life. Whirlpools with every stroke, my life. Jennifer L. Blank. And of this, Johnny says, the writer sees her life in the river. Hopefully, the river will provide her with calmness. And he felt that putting my life on its own line worked marvellously. Paddle boat. We churn out the sun from the lake. Paddle boat. We churn out the sun from the lake. And that's the first one from Mona Bedi. And Johnny says, as the oars strike the water, the ripples make the sun disappear. Churn nicely describes the movement of the paddles and the water. Lonely riverside walk, the synchronicity of oars. Lonely riverside walk, the synchronicity of oars. And that's also by Mona Bedi. And here Johnny says, the poet is alone, but the presence of paddlers passing provides a brief moment of human contact. Tandem float. Our paddles touch with each stroke. Tandem float. Our paddles touch with each stroke. Jacob Blumner. Johnny sees the paddles as working closely together, but not quite in sync, like life, at times, he says. Natural backwaters, the quiet exit of my ego. Natural backwaters, the quiet exit of my ego. By Lakshmi Iyer. And Johnny enjoyed that you can feel the peace and calmness in this one, allowing the poet to let go of everything and to just be. There are a few moments in time when we can let go of everything and just be. Well, I speak from my own personal opinion, I suppose. Maybe not everyone's like me. I have to really remind myself to do it. First day of spring. Becoming one with the river. First day of spring. Becoming one with the river. And that's by Melissa Dennison, who I think this year was one of the top 100 poets in Europe. And we're about to find out why, because there's a few more of hers coming along. Anyway, Johnny says of this poem, after a long winter, it's a joy to return to nature and feel alive again and forget everything. And he's right. I've just come in from the garden. It's springtime. And I've got loads of nettles that have come to life. If anyone knows how to get rid of nettles, do tell me. Because I had a few last year. And this year, I've got loads. Such silence in the pines, rolling through water. Such silence in the pines, rolling through water. Melissa Dennison. Johnny says, good wordplay. Is the silence rolling as well as the writer through the water? Good question, Johnny. Paddling through sky, the river's deep bend. Paddling through sky, the river's deep bend. Melissa Dennison. And Johnny says he can just visualise that jaw-dropping moment when you round a bend and see an amazing vista. Never going to happen to me. I've been in a canoe once, and once was quite enough. Steel cable crossing the jolt of cold river in my shorts. Steel cable crossing the jolt of cold river in my shorts. By Ralph Matthews. And Ralph, if you're listening, I don't have your email, so I couldn't tell you this was going to be on the podcast. Send me an email, please. Johnny says, lost in the peace and tranquility, water dripping into the boat jolts the writer awake. He's experienced this himself while canoeing years ago, so it evoked memories in him. I had a very different take on that poem, which was connected to the steel cables and the jolt of cold river. It took me to a different place, took me off the river, took me to an electrical environment, shall we say. Overgrowth, a drip of the stream off my paddle. Overgrowth, a drip of the stream off my paddle. Joshua Gage. As the previous poem, Johnny says, the writer is jolted awake by the still cold water. The use of stream instead of water elevates the poem. We can visualise the oar snagging and water hitting the writer. Paddling the languid river. Heron stays just ahead. Paddling the languid river. Heron stays just ahead. Christopher Seep. Johnny asks, is the heron paddling as well as the writer? Sometimes animals are curious about us, but also wary. Remember I told you I was cycling round the lake this week, and I came across a heron deep in the reeds. And normally when that happens, the heron would take off. But he just stood there and looked at me, waiting. Both of us waiting. There's got to be a haiku in that, hasn't there? Canoeing. A kingfisher watches the spring river. Canoeing. A kingfisher watches the spring river. Vaishnavi Ramaswamy. And Johnny says it's very similar to the previous one. The writer is immersed in the moment, but notices a bird watching. Ferry line, catching the oar, catching the amber river. Ferry line, catching the oar, catching the amber river. Alicia Sampson. of which Johnny says, good observation of a fleeting incident. Amber is interesting. The adjective conjures something calm and deep for him. And he thinks the use of catching twice works really well. It does, doesn't it? Catching the oar, catching the amber river. Paddling the kayak, the buoyancy of youth. Paddling the kayak, the buoyancy of youth. Rohan Boutel. Much like myself, Johnny thought the use of buoyancy was unusual. He says, you might say strength or vigour, but he likes the use of buoyancy. It works for him. And the last of the poems from the prompt is by Tony Williams. Skiffing the light fantastic. Skiffing the light fantastic. Which of course is a pun. Is the poet remarking that the spring light is fantastic? You could read it that way. And it could. It's written, you can't see this until you purchase the journal, but it's written as a one-line poem. And Johnny wondered, could it be 3? I'm not sure. I think it works nicely as a 1. Now then, before we drift any further downstream into today's poems on the same theme, but which have been previously published, there's a tiny pause for what I promise is a very gentle bit of housekeeping. If you're enjoying the Poetry Peacast, if it's become part of your week, like a good flapjack, or a visit to the local chippy, I can dream, you might consider supporting us. Nothing dramatic, no grand gestures required. You can become a member, which is wonderfully sustaining and makes you feel like part of the inner circle. No secret handshake, but we are working on a particular raising of the eyebrow. Or, if that commitment feels a bit much, you can simply buy us a coffee, which in practical terms means keeping the podcast fueled. Or you can donate via PayPal. Quick and painless and very much appreciated. All of this can be done easily through the website, which has been designed, if you can call what I did designed, to require minimal faffing. And of course, if your wallet is giving you a stern look, as mine is currently, there are other equally valuable ways to help. Tell your poetry friends, whisper about us in literary corners, or better yet, shout about us on your socials. However you choose to support, financially, socially, simply by listening, thank you. It does make a difference and keeps this little pod ticking along nicely. Right, I've had a sustaining drink of my tea. Let's carry on. I've got some poetry that I've read on this theme, which you might enjoy. Paper mill lock, cloudburst in each lift of the oarsman's paddle. Paper mill lock, cloudburst in each lift of the oarsman's paddle. Robert Kingston from the Poetry Pea Journal, Autumn 2021. As the crow flies, the curves of the river. As the crow flies, the curves of the river. Mark Gilbert. Poetry Pea Journal, Autumn 2021. Do you like the contradictions in that poem? Dawn Canal. The oarsmen draw a new horizon. Dawn Canal. The oarsmen draw a new horizon. Anne Morrigan, from the Poetry Pea Journal 2/23. Slow river, the blind man slices an apple. Slow river, the blind man slices an apple. Martin Lucas, from Freewheeling. Willow branches bend, with the river current ducks drift backwards. Willow branches bend, with the river current ducks drift backwards. Also by Martin Lucas. Every bend, however long it runs, the river path. Every bend, however long it runs, the river path. And that's by Brett Brady. The Poetry Pea Journal 2021. Lake Mist Dawn. The slow pull of oars through my thoughts. Lake Mist Dawn. The slow pull of oars through my thoughts. John Hawkhead, Poetry Pea Journal Autumn 2020. And one last poem also from the Poetry Pea Journal in 2020. Mountain River, the flow of our small talk. Mountain River, the flow of our small talk. And that's by Edward Cody Huddleston. And I know, sad news, that brings us gently to the end of today's paddle. Before you slip your oars and drift back into the busy current of real life, a small reminder of your missions this week. Do sign up for the newsletter so you don't miss a single bend in the river. Be it a prompt, be it a Haibun submission call out, or the occasional ripple of poetic mischief. And you make sure you don't miss something amazing. If you're able, support the podcast in whatever way suits you. Membership, a virtual coffee, a donation, or simply by giving us a hearty shout out from the riverbank. Every little nudge helps to keep this canoe gliding along rather nicely. And crucially, keep everything crossed. Fingers, toes, paddles if you can manage it, for Crystal Palace. Let's see those Eagles soar their way into another final. It's what poetry would want. Definitely what poetry would want. And I'll be back next week with more lyrical haiku and senryu to keep your creative cogs turning. Until then, keep writing. Ciao.